You know, the internet is full of everybody's opinion and video footage of everyone in the world. It's really hard, I think, for coaches to, in some ways, convince young athletes to stay motivated and work to the next skills. Because when I was a kid, I was solely reliant on Sergey's opinion and Sergey telling me what difficulty I needed to put in my routines. Because I had no idea when I turned up to the British Championships when I was, let's say, 14, what my competitors like Max or Reece Betford or Ashley Watson were going to do, because we'd not seen each other for 2 or 3 months. So I just had to do as much difficulty as possible and hope that I'd learnt more in that space of time between the last competition to give me a better chance of winning the competition. Whereas now, kids can just go on YouTube and they can watch what all of the best gymnasts in the country are doing all of the time. And I think that's definitely made it much harder for kids to stay motivated as well, because you can see what level you need to be at. Also, it can be pretty overwhelming, you know. You might have a day where you're struggling in the gym and you look at some American gymnast that's done some incredible piece of gymnastics and you think, wow, it's the same thing as social media and seeing that, you know, the shiny pictures everybody puts on, it's never really the reality. It's the same thing in gymnastics. And I'd noticed this a lot as well towards the end of my career. I'd noticed sometimes in the gym, some of the younger gymnasts that hadn't got that experience like I did, I would have been exactly the same when I was younger. And at times I've done it myself. They would be struggling with their training in the gym and their preparation for a big competition. But I'd noticed they'd put on a video of them when they were feeling fresh, maybe not on a routine day, when they were just doing a couple of skills. And I'd see them put this video on and I'd think, wow, that's not a reflection of your training at the moment. Like, why have you put that online? And I'm sure part of it is to get that feedback, that positive feedback. I've done it before. I've put videos of me doing gymnastics online and people say, oh, you're doing amazing, that's great. And it gives me that little bit of a boost. But you can't kid yourself. You know what's been happening in your training. So there's definitely pros and cons to really analysing stuff and watching everything out there. And I think for me, going back to that original conversation I had with Lee Wood and looking at my own experience, when I look at like Sergey's strengths, his strengths really were his technical ability is unbelievable, his experience and his knowledge and his man management. But maybe he struggled at times with knowing the code, so knowing the rules of gymnastics, because he just wanted to be in the gym. Sergey probably didn't watch loads of gymnastics. He wants to be in the gym coaching hands-on. So that's maybe why I tried to fill that gap a little bit. But now, as I got towards the end of my career, and I said this to Lee Wood when I was talking to him, because he said his coaches always try to get him to like watch more footage. And I said, look, at the end of my career, those last 2 years, I actually got to the point where I was quite bored of watching loads of gymnastics, and I was actually only focused on my gymnastics. So I wasn't watching anybody else. And whenever the gymnastics would come on TV, if it was the World Championships, even the Olympic Games, I'd watch it for 10 minutes and be like, oh, I'm a bit bored now. Because I was only really focused on my own race and my own gymnastics. I think that's really important. And I think that's, if I was going to give some advice to a young athlete starting out now that maybe is obsessed with the sport, because I mean, I was a super fan, like I was one of them kids that would have been there queuing for hours trying to get people's autographs, you know, at competitions. I can remember doing that in 2003. I went to the Glasgow World Cup. I took my disposable camera. I've still got some of them photos now. They're all grainy and like black. And I stood there getting pictures with everybody, getting them to sign all my books and stuff and sign my T-shirt, because I really was a super fan. But I think in many ways it took the love out of it. It switched from being me loving watching gymnastics to it being like part of the job. And it's important. I think it's important to watch yourself. But that's the key, I think. Watching your own footage of your own routines back, not focusing on anybody else. Because ultimately, when you go out there and you put your hand up to the judges, you're not in control of what anybody else is going to do. You can only control your own gymnastics. And so, yeah, I think my advice to a young gymnast really would focus on that. It's concentrate on yourself. Definitely, if you're going to learn a new skill and you and your coach are thinking about, let's say, learning a Kachev on the high bar, go on YouTube, find loads of Kachevs, look at different types of actions, different styles and techniques. Think about the one that maybe best suits your body type or the type of gymnast that you are and your strengths. But yeah, try not to spend too much time focusing on other people. And always remember that social media isn't what it seems. So if you see these highlight reels of people doing these incredibly big skills, You're not seeing the day-to-day training, and that's the really important stuff. I was always the most impressed in the gym. I wasn't impressed with the kids that, could come in when they were fresh and they'd do these massive tricks and stuff. I was more interested, right, who can get through 6 routines in a training session, like 3 days in a week. That used to impress me a bit more. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey studying the sport, and it still helps me today, and it still has a positive impact. And I think where that really helps is the coaching side of the sport, and probably like commentating or judging. But as a gymnast, I think you should really just focus on your own job and let your coach do the analysis and let the judges in the gym focus on the rules and stuff. That's what I would say to young people, because it has massively helped. And even in my coaching now, like when I worked with kids in the gym, I started to pick up on these small little things. I can spot things in gymnastics and not everybody can see. When I was working with some of the kids in Nottingham, I'd noticed that some of these gymnasts were struggling to twist forwards, and I was trying to figure out what is that. And I noticed that some of them might not naturally twist in their right direction. So I tried to back engineer that. And when I go into schools and I go into teach gymnastics now at really low level, I really focus on those little details because I think they make a big difference. And those pathways that you go down in the very beginning, they really influence your gymnastics for your whole career. So that analysis has massively helped me with that. When I look at sport from a coaching standpoint, or I look at it from a judging standpoint, or analysis or punditry or commentary, all those hours of studying gymnastics competitions was definitely well worth it. But towards the end, I really did get to the point where I was only focused on myself. And more than anything, as a gymnast, a young athlete, whatever sport you're doing, a young person, you need to have enough space in your brain for learning. And if you're constantly focusing on what other people were doing, it's going to tire you out, and it's going to be a detriment to your own performance, I think. I spotted that for the first time when I went to the World Championships in 2011, and I can remember being just in awe that I was competing with all of these gymnasts. I was making my senior debut at World Championships, although I'd been there as a reserve the year before, and I competed on that. We did the podium session. I did really well in the podium session, and I can remember reading this blog afterwards. This gymnastics blogger had put, Sam Oldham on pommel horse, definitely going to be a world champion one day, and that just, the pressure I felt instantly on my shoulders after that. And then reading every single comment, reading all the other gymnasts' performances and their scores in qualification. And one of my teammates used to do that. He used to watch every single score. I had an inkling that's probably not a healthy thing to do, probably not a good thing to do for your own performance. So yeah, for me, it's always about focusing on yourself, making sure that you enjoy the sport, you do study it, it is important, but running your own race is the most important thing, and let the people around you, so your coaches, judges in the gym, whoever that might be in whatever sport you're in or whatever walk of life you're in, the most important thing is focusing on your own race.